child, things are gonna get easier. Ooh, child, things will get brighter. Ooh, child, things are gonna get easier. Ooh, child, things will get brighter. Someday we'll get it together and we'll get it undone. Someday when the world is much brighter. Walk in the rays of a beautiful sun. Someday when the world is much lighter. Ooh, child, things are gonna get easier. Ooh, child, things will get brighter. Ooh, child, things.
Good morning. Thank you for coming today in honor of Child Abuse Prevention Month. Did you know that the United States spends approximately $11.6 billion a year on child abuse on the federal, state, and local level? Approximately 3 million children a year are reported for abuse and neglect in the United States, and 1 million of those children are confirmed as abuse and neglect. Approximately 3 children a day die from abuse and neglect, and many more physically injured, sexually, emotionally, and physically. Child abuse cuts across all walks of life. A child of any race, social background, or economic class can be abused. When we think of children, we generally think of children under the age of 13, 4 or 6 years old. But let us not forget those children, 13 through 18, who are also abused and neglected in our country. In the state of Texas, CPS receives approximately 3,600 phone calls a year on abuse and neglect children that are reported. Of those 360,000, 58,000 children in our state, in our city, in our town, in our counties, in our neighborhoods are confirmed abuse and neglect. Those are children that we see walking down the streets from school, that we sit next to in church, that we read about in the newspapers. Approximately 600,000 children in the state of the United States are in foster care. We are parents to about 12,000 of those children in the state of Texas. As a nation, we say we will not tolerate abuse and neglect. When we read the horrific stories in the paper of abuse and neglect, it makes us sad, it makes us angry. I know it makes me angry. When we hear about what parents do, teachers do, and caregivers do to children, we say, how can we tolerate that? How as a nation can we tolerate abuse to our children? But what we need to do is take our anger, take our words, and turn those into action. And as government officials, and as government agency and nonprofits, we need to start working together and quit talking about what can we do, and quit saying let's not tolerate this and do it. When a child welfare families comes through our child welfare doors in CPS, all of us need to be working together on some level to provide those children with the best care they deserve, and those families with the best care they deserve when they're in our systems. Because our families are your families. And breaking the barriers so they can access our systems better, such as Cedric will talk about when he talks about his 18 years in our foster care system. We can provide those services as we would want to provide our children and our families in foster care. When we think of abuse, most of us think of the physical abuse of a child, a broken arm, a bruise, a baby that has been shaken so hard that it suffers permanent brain damage or it dies from that abuse. But child abuse can be hidden, like someone with cancer or someone with HIV. Child abuse is not something we can always see. We can't see the emotional abuse that happens at home to our children, the sexual abuse that happens at home or in the schools to our children. But we can start seeing it if we start listening and reaching out to our children and understanding the stages that they grow through and understanding that they just want to be heard. If we start, as we are here today, knowing that the first step to prevention of child abuse is to understand what child abuse is, understand what the behaviors, the indicators are of our children, and how to report it. Dr. Patricia Newland will be speaking on that this afternoon at 1 o'clock. That's the first step. Our children will show us in so many words, their behaviors, and their actions that something isn't quite right in their home. We need to realize that When a child, such as in the Head Start classroom, is running around wildly, like knocking other kids, that child always doesn't have ADA, or that child didn't have too much sugar in their cereal for breakfast. Let's not label. Let's start to understand. When a teenager skips school and starts smoking pot, let's not say that teenager's just rebelling, or that parent isn't a good disciplined parent. Let's start saying, is something not quite right in that person's home or in their environment? You might say, what is our role? What is our role as an employee, as a community, as an agency, as an individual? What is our role in this prevention? Our role is to start working together and to understand what child abuse and neglect is. And you may say, I really work hard in the field I'm in. I'm already in the social service field. What can I do? We have an excellent child welfare staff, which most of you are on child welfare. Most of you are at ACF here. For those of you who don't know our ACF staff, we have a dedicated, hard-working child welfare staff that is passionate about fighting abuse and neglect. And I would like to introduce them now. We have Judy Baggett, who's in tribal child welfare. She does all the tribal child welfare in the region. Sharon Butler, June Lloyd, who is our manager, Janice Davis, we have TJ Jones, who I don't see, Joe Wooder, who is over there, and I want to especially thanks for helping me and the team putting this event together. We have Leon McCallum, who is our director here, director of ACF. Through his leadership, we are able to reach out and do events like this. We also, did I think I missed something? Pat Newland, yes, Dr. Pat Newland, who I mentioned earlier. She'll also be doing a presentation this afternoon. I also want to introduce Christine Hernandez, who is the director of the Department of Health and Human Services, and she would like to speak a little bit on the prevention of child abuse and neglect. Before she was appointed by Clinton to be our director, she served under Secretary Shalala as the representative to federal, state, and local officials on numerous child issues and health issues. She also served as director of the Southwest Policy Leadership Forum, and she served 4 terms in the Texas House of Representatives. Ms. Hernandez has always devoted her energy, her time, and her talents on the behalf of young children. She will speak, and then I will introduce our dynamic panel.
It's a pleasure to be with you as we commemorate National Child Abuse Prevention Month and contemplate what we as an agency, what we as individuals, and we as a community can do to prevent and abolish this rising crisis. American poet Carl Sandburg once said, "A baby is God's opinion that life should go on." Indeed, children are our link to the future and our hope for a better tomorrow. Of course, anyone who has spent time with children certainly knows that their imaginations are boundless. And that reminds me of a story about one of my favorite literary characters, Charlie Brown. One beautiful September day, Charlie Brown and his pals were lying on a baseball diamond and looking up at the sky. You remember doing that as a child? You'd look up and see all these images and try to figure out what you could see up there. And Lucy said, "There's Madame Curie in her lab making a life-saving discovery." Then Linus added, "There's Aristotle contemplating the nature of the universe." And Schroeder remarked, "That's Beethoven penning the Ninth Symphony." Finally, they all looked at Charlie Brown, and he answered, "Well, I was going to say there's a horse and a doggy, but I've changed my mind." One of the things that distinguishes Peanuts from any other cartoons about children is the complete absence of adults or parents in this particular comic strip. But we know that in the real world, children can't take care of themselves. In the real world, some children aren't even safe in their own homes. And in the real world, millions of children suffer from abuse, neglect, and psychological trauma. We all know what children need. They need the loving hands and caring hearts of adults to nurture their bodies and their spirits, to ease their pain and fears, and to help provide encouragement and comfort. When children of abuse do not receive the nurturing that they need, they carry the scars of their abuse and neglect for the rest of their lives. We can both be thankful and proud of the fact that over the last 5 years, the number of children abused and neglected in America has decreased, although it doesn't seem that way. Every day we hear stories in the newspaper, on the radio about abused and neglected children, but the stats tell us something different, so I'm not quite sure where we're at. But it's a crisis regardless of what the numbers say. If there's one abused child, it's too many. And unfortunately, parents continue to be the main perpetrators of child maltreatment, with more than 80% of all child victims being victimized by one or both parents. Former President Theodore Roosevelt once said, "Dare to do mighty things." And I'm proud that this administration has redefined national security by recognizing the importance of family issues and daring to make child abuse and neglect a top priority for the nation. Working with Congress, President Clinton has passed important legislation to combat child abuse and neglect, such as the adoption of the State Family Act of 1997, adding amendments to the Child Abuse Prevention and Treatment Act, and establishing the Promoting Safe and Stable Family Program. These laws focus on protecting and removing our children from dangerous situations, developing networks of community-based prevention-focused family support programs. And only a few weeks ago, President Clinton signed into law the Child Abuse Prevention Enforcement Act, which gives states and local officials greater flexibility in using Department of Justice grant programs to prevent child abuse and neglect. This new legislation will increase funding to enforce laws, to enhance investigations, and to promote programs to prevent abuse and neglect. And while much has been done, we know that more than 3 children each day in this country die from abuse and neglect. That's not only shocking, it's intolerable. There are a variety of risk factors that contribute to child abuse and neglect, including parental substance abuse, lack of parenting skills, domestic violence, and extreme stress. Like the African proverb says, it takes a village to raise a child. We know that keeping children safe in a community is a community responsibility, and prevention must be our focus. As a federal agency, HHS must do all that we can to educate our employees in every operating division, every staff division, about the incidence of child abuse and neglect, so that the issue becomes an integrated, cross-cutting issue for all HHS departments and agencies, not just an ACF issue. For example, child abuse and neglect issues should be a concern to HICVA as it pertains to the hospital care that a child might receive as a result of abuse and neglect. It should be a concern to HRSA as they train healthcare professionals to work with low-income and rural communities. It should be a concern of the Office of Family Planning as they educate young mothers. And it should be a concern of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention when outreach is done to immunize our infants. The message of child abuse can and should be shared with parents. We must continue to work with and support our state and community-based partners who are on the front lines in our efforts to improve and ensure that no child falls through the cracks. And we must continue to work to ensure that a seamless system of support services are in place for the removal of a child from a dangerous home and the placement of that child into a safe environment. It will take every segment of our society getting involved in order to eradicate child abuse and neglect, including health and law enforcement, school, businesses, the media, government agencies, community health organizations, and parents themselves. Winston Churchill once said, "We make a living by what we get, but we make a life by what we give." The President has issued a challenge to us in his proclamation by asking us not only to thank those who keep our children safe, but also by asking each individual to take action within our own communities in order to do our part in making them healthy places where children can grow and thrive. Each of us can make a pledge today to make a difference in the lives of those touched by abuse, by volunteering at domestic violence shelters or the nonprofit agencies that serve family in crisis, by becoming a foster parent, speaking on or providing written materials to churches, schools, libraries, soccer, and baseball clubs, and educating healthcare professionals about available community services and resources. I want to commend ACF, and especially Michelle, for putting together today's program and to educate all of us about child abuse and neglect. And I also want to thank the guest speakers for sharing their stories with us today. Robert Kennedy used to quote George Bernard Shaw in saying that while some see things as they are and ask why, he would dream about things that were not and ask why not. As responsible citizens, I think it's our obligation to do the same, not only to consider the problems facing our children and their families, but also to adopt a vision of what could be. A vision of an America where every child has a chance to be healthy and grow up in a nurturing and caring home. A vision of an America where parents have the skills to care for their children. A vision of an America where every family has the support of the community. And a vision of an America where every community has the systems in place to support those families. That's my dream for an America, and I'm sure that's your dream for America also. So just take a moment to think about the dream again, and then ask yourself, why not, and what can I do to make this a better place for our children?
I've been speaking publicly for about 10 years now, and I'm always impressed, and it always touches me to see people that are truly involved with this issue, that dedicate their lives to prevention of this issue. I work with, for GTE, soon to be Verizon, Virgin Atlantic. So I've got to get used to that name. And I've been with them 6 years. I transferred from Atlanta, where I grew up, Atlanta, Georgia, in 1997. So I've been in Dallas for 3 years. And I was very honored to work with the Georgia Council of Child Abuse in Atlanta as volunteer at first and then speaker. And from that, there was a connection with the director of the Georgia Council to the director of PCAT, or Prevention of Abuse Texas, in Austin, and I was asked to be a board member on PCAT about a year ago. So it was my pleasure. Of course, one of my dedications is the prevention of child abuse in all forms. And what I'm here to talk to you about today is I think, to reiterate to you all how you make a difference. I know sometimes, just like in my job, I'm a business analyst for GTE, I just look at paper sometimes and I don't make the connection. And I truly think, just listening and just my experience as a speaker, that we have made a difference as an elected agencies through people like myself being able to speak out. We've come a long way. I'm 39 years old, and I was sexually abused beginning at age 4 by an uncle and my grandfather. As I remember, my grandfather, that only happened on one occasion, but my abuse with my uncle extended over a 10-year period. So my first memories are from 4 to 14. I grew up in an upper middle class home. It looked perfect from the outside, but what was going on behind the closed doors when I went to visit my uncle was a whole different story. And in my thoughts back on being a child, I think the two things that stand out are what was impacted forever, although I'm pleased to say that I consider myself a success story today, is trust was violated for me. And the meaning of love, what is love? A child is innocent, and it always touches me to see people involved in helping to protect their innocence, because once that's destroyed, some benefits, some don't. We can see evidence of that in our system today. I feel very fortunate and very positive that I was able, as an adult, to piece my life back together, to get help from a therapist, to have a network of close friends and family members to help me put my life back together. And that didn't start until I was 25. The abuse as we know, is very significant. It continues again and again and again, regardless of whether it's self-abuse, in my case, or whether you lash out, either your child or someone else to abuse them. I really didn't realize that I was on my first step to recovery from my own abuse was my uncle's daughter had a child, or got pregnant. We were very close. I'm an only child, so She got pregnant. This is back in 1984. And I was having a lot of problems at the time. I was on substance abuse. I was still in college. Don't really have a lot of memories of my childhood other than the abuse. And I knew when she got pregnant that one day I'd have to tell her because of my love for her. What I was really saying is it was my first step to taking care of myself. When she had the child, on the way to the hospital, I knew that I would have to tell her. And my life got a little bit crazier in the next couple of years until one day I sat down with her and her sister and said, I've got something to tell you. And her sister said, you were abused too. Unfortunately, the mother of the child doesn't have any recollection of her own abuse. I did what was necessary to make them aware, to give them the opportunity to break the cycle. I don't think that I was here today in front of you had I not made that first step. That first step propelled me to get my own life by trying to take care of another child. And it also has brought me to the point I am today in having this discussion, being able to make an impact to prevent child abuse. Unfortunately, I don't have any communication with the family any longer because it was easier for them to deny that it happened, to close the circle and continue on with their life as though the abuse didn't exist. My cousin is the little boy who was 18 months at the time. His mother was a nurse. He was examined. They were told an investigation couldn't begin because there was evidence that he had been sexually abused at 18 months. I find that very sad. It broke my heart. It also broke my heart to lose part of my family. But the fact is I did right. He's 15 today, and I am bothered by the fact that he probably has the same memories that I grew up with. And may very well continue that cycle for whatever time when he has a family. If he doesn't get help. My uncle is still alive. He's in his 70s. He never got help. But again, I've done what I could to break that cycle. What I'm impressed about as we move to today, to the new millennium, to 2000, is the type of agency that you all offer wasn't in existence when I was a kid. The other thing that didn't happen was we didn't discuss this issue. We didn't talk about abuse. It was something hidden, except in very extreme forms. You know, you wouldn't have seen my case come across your desk because it was never reported. The ones that are reported, I feel, are very fortunate to at least have someone else's eyes on it. I think, but we've made a lot of progress, and there's certainly a lot more to be made with the fact that it is being talked about. It is being looked at. There is help for people now, whether it's physical, sexual, or emotional. And talking about it, working toward the goal as a collective is what makes the difference. And part of my work, as long as I'm here on this earth, is the continued discussions and or the prevention of what impact I can make to protect one child. If I've done that, then I've done my job, and I know that I've done it. So again, I want to thank you for being here today. I want to thank you for your continued work, and I hope that my voice has made what might come across your desk as a case to realize what the voice behind it is. It is appreciated, and you are making a difference.
Can I see a show of hands of people who have children in here? Can you just raise your hands? Now, close your eyes. Do me a favor. Close your eyes for a second and go with me for just a second. Now, you have a child, and your child is born, and you raise your child, you feed your child, you send your child to bed, you tell your child a story, you take your child to school, you take your child to church, you take your child to the store, you buy your child a bike, you buy your child a Christmas gift, you tell your child I love you, you tell your child I care about you, I'm here for you. You take your child to places where the child wants to go. Now, open your eyes for a second. What if your child never knew you and you never knew your child? My life started in the foster care system when I was 6 days old. My mom left me at the hospital. My father was a school teacher somewhere in Arkansas, Little Rock, Arkansas, and he had previously had a child by my mother. And she could not take care of 2 kids, so she basically left me at the hospital. The social workers tried to get with her to let her know, what are you going to do with this child? And she just never came back to get me. I almost died in the hospital because I had bronchitis, asthma, and allergies and sinus, which I'm suffering from now. So they put me in a temporary placement. The state of Arkansas back in the 60s, 1966, they called it Child Welfare System, Social Service System. Back then, now it's the DHS, Department of Health and Human Service. They put me in a temporary placement where the lady that they put me in a home was 66 years old. She only took in handicapped and disabled children for temporary placements. They put me there hoping to find me a placement. They submitted my name to an adoption specialist to say, well, this child is a candidate for adoption, so we're going to find him an adopted home. We're going to leave him in this home until we find him a permanent placement. Well, that never happened. They left me in that home. Now, make note, the home that I lived was for handicapped, disabled children. I was a normal infant with no medical problems. So they left me in the home, and I stayed in the home, and I grew within the other children because I was a child. My foster brothers and my foster sisters that were handicapped, I didn't know any difference. I just knew that they were my brothers and they were my sisters. And we all were the same. We went to the store together, we went to church together, we got in the car and went to school together. No difference. I did not know. When I was in elementary school, I remember students used to tease me and look at me different. Even the teachers, they say, well, he has a handicap. There's something wrong with him because of the environment that he lives under. He's a foster child. And to my understanding, the home that he lives at is for disabled, handicapped children. So they treated me like a handicapped child. They said, well, we're going to put him in this resource class because he is a handicapped child. I remember my second grade teacher, she said to the principal, she said, I can't do that because he can read and he can write. But throughout the elementary school, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, 6th grade, I still didn't know any difference from what was going on in my surroundings. But it was hard. They were teasing me. There was no friends to visit the home because the foster parent that I had, she was very protective of all the children. And I was treated the same as a handicapped child, is that you don't go outside, you don't go in the front yard, you stay in the backyard. You're confined into a little circle, which is the farthest that you can go. And I was looking at my case file, and I noticed that on my documentation, the social workers had documented that we need to move this child from his home because he will lose his stabilization, stimulation with the environment. He needs to be with a home where he can get more from a loving family. They did this for 8-9 years. At the end, they said, well, he has bonded well with the family, so they never took me out of the home. So when I got to the 7th and 8th grade, I was a very rebellious child. I started to do rebellious things. I started sneaking out. I started hanging out with my peers, my school peers, my friends who I thought would love me, who cared for me, but really didn't. But that's who I looked up to. And I started doing things as sneaking out at night, started hanging out with the wrong crowd. I never got in trouble with the law or anything. I was with this group. Everyone classified me as a problem child. Even throughout my days being in foster care, in my early adolescent age, I saw my brothers, my sisters get molested by the older foster children. And I felt that I was a voice for those children, and I brought attention to the social workers to let them know, hey, this is going on in that house. So I didn't know, as a child, I didn't know if I was saying the right or wrong thing. I just said what I saw, and I specifically told them what I saw. They didn't do anything about it. They basically just ignored it. They thought I was the one that had the problem, because my foster mother told them, Cedric lies all the time. But I was a child, I was an innocent child, and I saw these things. How could I lie about something that I saw that an older foster child did to a little disabled little girl? Even, I didn't get molested or I got neglected in a way is that no one did anything for me as far as what Cedric wanted to do, what Cedric wanted to say. It was that Cedric has a problem. Cedric is in a situation. He's not going to do anything. He's not going to be anything. We're not going to do anything for Cedric. When I got to the 8th and 9th grade, they basically wrote me off. The social worker documented that I went to class every day because I love school. My friends were in school. And I was in sports. I participated in band. I could read and write. I thought I was doing okay. But the only problems that I had was at home. They sent me to a counselor who ran these tests. I played a trick with him. He ran all these IQ tests. Well, do this test. Well, do this puzzle, see how fast you can do it. So I looked at the puzzle and I looked at it, didn't do anything with it. So he wrote down and said he could not do this puzzle. So he has a problem. So they put me in a situation as well. I don't think he's going to make it to high school because he did not pass his IQ test. His score was very low. So the school system forgot about me. The social worker forgot about me. My foster mother forgot about me. Only people that I got along with was my peers, I thought, at that time, because I was in a situation where the counselor that was counseling me, he was a licensed social worker. And he said to me, he said, your only problem is the home that you're living in. You're not happy in the home. So you've been there all your life. He said, what if we move you out of the home and put you somewhere where you can be with a family? What do you think about that? Does it matter? I said, no, it really doesn't matter. I just want somebody I can go home to. He tried to do that with the social workers and with the administrations of the Department of Human Services, but they denied it based on my past history with the social worker. They basically said Cedric was a problem child. Cedric has problems in school. The only problems I had in school was that I wanted to be seen, I wanted to be noticed. The only people that loved me was in school. So I got kicked out of my foster home when I was 16 because I left home for 2 days and stayed at a friend's house and they couldn't find me. My foster mother, who as I previously said, she was 66 when I was born, and I was 16 at this time. So they tell you how old she is now. She couldn't deal with me. So basically, she told the social workers, come get me. I want him out of my home. So they took me out of the home. They sent me to Pine Bluff, Arkansas, to a youth home. They said, well, no one is going to take a 16-year-old disobedient child. So they sent me to a youth home where I stayed there 13 months in this one town. I get a little emotional when I talk about it. This one counselor said to me, she said, you have two choices in life. One, you can make it. One, you can't make it. So she saw the potential in me. She said, you can read, you can write, you do well in school. And she got with the social worker that I had in Pine Bluff, and she basically watched me through high school. She saw my potential, and that was the first time ever in my life that I really sat down and studied and really knew that I could do what I could do. So
Take time.
So going through high school, I participated in a lot of the sports, the band. I got involved with all the things that were in school. After 13 months, they sent me to another foster home, and that foster home happened to be the best foster home that I ever lived in. She had kids my age, and she treated me like her child. I felt good. I said, well, hey, I can do this. I was doing well in school. I was on honor roll every semester. I was about to graduate because this particular time I was 18 years old. And the state told me basically, they said, when you turn 18, you basically are a system. And they did that. When I turned 18, they just removed me from the system because I was considered a grown person at a particular time. My foster mother, the last foster mother that I had, she went on ahead and helped me. She said, well, you come back here until you graduate from school, whatever you need to do with yourself. But before I got to the age 18, the social workers asked me, they said, what do you want us to do for you? Do you want a family? What do you want? I said, well, it doesn't really matter if it's black or white or blue. I just want a family. And whenever I want to go to college, if I decide I want to go to college, I have a place to come to when I come back home. Well, that didn't happen because basically they did not do an independent living study for me. They just basically, I heard a social worker say, and this really gave me some enthusiasm and gave me my mindset to want to do good for myself in life. Because she said to my boss, she said, I don't know why we need to do an independent study for a second because he will be 18. 9 or 10 times he's not going to do it. He's not going to do anything for his life anyway. So what we'll do is not do it for him. He'll be 18 within 7 months, so it's not worried about that. I heard that. And that scared the daylights out of me because I had been in the system for all my life and I didn't know anybody. And I asked them before I turned 18, I said, well, maybe you can find a cousin, find an uncle or somebody that I can possibly find one day. So they said, well, we'll see what we can do. And they really never did any research as far as trying to find my biological family because that's a lot of work, a lot of work. So when I turned 18, I graduated from high school, and when I left Poland, the only person that was there was my junior high school basketball coach, and he gave me a hug, gave me a gift. But to go through that to hear your classmates say, where's your mom, where's your dad? You know, there was no one for graduation, there was no family reunions, there was no Thanksgiving dinners, there was no Christmas, that was set. So I decided to go to college, and the state basically said no, because you're not in the system anymore, so you're at home. So what I did was I went to the governor's mansion and I stayed there for a couple of days, and President Clinton, who was the governor of Arkansas, he basically got me in college. And I attended college, and they knew my story, and when I got to college, they were still trying to figure out is how did he graduate from high school with honors, and he's in college now, we're gonna just see what he can do. And I was in Michigan State. Well, I started at San Diego State, and I had scholarships. I played music, and I ended up back in Arkansas. And I went to Henderson State, and when I could get a scholarship, I had a grant. But still, in the back of my mind, I wanted to know who were my parents. Somebody has to be there. I had stayed in the foster care system for all my life, didn't know no one. I said, somebody has to be there. So I eventually transferred to University of Arkansas Pine Bluff. I was vice president of student government, and I was who's among college students at the university. I did a lot of I talk about the story so many times, I get very emotional, so I slur my words. But I talked about how it hurts to not know your biological family when you know that there's somebody out there. After attending college, when I was in college, when I was about to graduate, no one knew anything about me as far as what I went through as far as my childhood age. They didn't know nothing about, I was a foster home because I kept it silent. I never really just sat and talked to anybody about it unless I did public speaking for kids because I'm very much advocate for children. And when I graduated, before I graduated, they did a story on me, foster child, said McKinsey is going to graduate. And they looked at me and said, well, that's why you're arrogant the way you are. That's why you don't, that's why you don't. I mean, they were very, very, very much amazed that I had went to college and I was about to graduate. And not knowing not knowing my cousin. But in the back of my mind, I still wanted to know who was my mother, who was my father. So when I graduated from college, I was working at Social Security in Little Rock. And I still was involved with children. Like I said, I was very much an advocate for children. I wanted to let them know, despite what people say about you, you can make it. So when I studied my case file from what the social worker told me, the social worker who really cared for me when I was 18 years old, she told me, she said, make sure you get your case file and read it. And when you read it, start doing research and you will find some interesting things in it. And I did that. I started crying because I did not know half of the stuff that had happened to me through the years that I went through foster care. I remember some of the times that it may have happened, but never knew the degree of it. So I decided to do some research. I wanted to find my family, and I did that. Well, in 1995, I had a friend, a guy in Oklahoma. We went to college together. So I went to his funeral in Omaha, Arkansas. And I met this pretty lady, and she said, I know you. I said, yeah, I know you. I said, you before too. So we basically had a conversation, and such as when people meet each other, they have a conversation, exchange phone numbers, business cards, whatever. So we did that, and then we started talking, and then she asked, who's your mother? I said, well, based on my case file, my mother is this person, and on my birth certificate, she's this. She said, well, let me call you back. She hung up the telephone. She called me back a day later, and she said, I need you to talk to my mother. And I talked to her mother. I said, for what? She said, I think you are my cousin. You're my cousin. I was like, nah. Now remember, I lived 29 years not knowing anybody, but doing research to find her. And she was astonished. She just could not say anything. She said, just talk to my mother. And I talked to her mom and found out that they are related to me, they were my family. And from there, you know, you hear horror stories when you meet your family, you don't get what you really want. And I really prayed sincerely for my cousin. I said, I just want to find my cousin, I'll find everybody. If I can just find somebody. And when I started doing research, knowing where my brother stayed, knowing where my mother stayed, knowing who my father was, knowing that I had a sister, knowing my uncles, knowing my aunts, and then doing the research of the history and finding why it happened the way it happened. You know, my mother and father played a game with each other. My father got another one pregnant in another city. My mother had a child that she could barely take care of, and she had me, so she basically used me for a scapegoat because of my father. She said, well, since you did me this way, I'm not going to keep this child, and she did that. Talked to my father before I moved to Dallas to ask him. I said, why did she do this? He basically denied everything. He said, well, I know that I'm not your father, but your mother is your mother. And I'm sorry that it happened this way, and we just didn't want to talk about it. Back in the 60s, my mother was 16 years old when she had my brother, and she had me 4 years later. Back in the 60s, it's very hard for a single mother really to take care of a child, and everyone looked at that mother as less than low in life. Having 2 children is not married. And my father, who was like 6 years older than my mother, he basically was very solid because, as you know, she's 16, my father was 5 years older than her, and basically it's against the law. Well, after all of that, I called my mom and I told her who I was, and she told me, she said, I was a maniac on a loose trying to destroy the family, don't call me ever again. And that's the only time I spoke to my mother. And it hurt very much to hear that from my mother, very much. But, you know, I have my uncles, I have my aunts, I have my cousins. I have my brothers. I have an older brother that we talk every now and then, but I have a brother that's next to me. I'm 33, he's 31. I visit him once a month, and we talk, and he's upset because of the situation that happened. We're very close in trying to get what we lost from all those years of not knowing each other. I have a sister that I haven't met yet. She's going to be 20, but she lives with my mother. It's very hard to get to her. It's like one part of the family talks to me, but my mother doesn't talk to me, and my mother does not have anything to do with my other part of my family because of me. But I'm just happy for what I have, the little bit I do have. But it's very important for agencies that you work for to look at a child for a child. Not look at a child because a child has a case number. Not look at a child because a child has a problem. Look at a child as if that was your child. Because I have a child myself. My child is 12 years old, and I love my child. He's going to be living with me when he turns 13. And he asks questions. Where's do I have a grandmother? Do I have a grandfather? Because he wants to know. And a child should have to go through in life wondering what happened, how did it happen. If a social worker would sit down and get her a job, the adoption specialist would sit down and did his job. As far as look at this child's situation. Let's put him and place him in a better situation where he can get the most out of life. We all need to look at that as far as children. If you got a child, that all the child wants is love. All the child wants is someone just to listen to, talk to. And I decided to write my story, to write a book about my story, because the title was Overcoming Obstacles in Life, Saving the Kid's Story, Child's Love for His Mother. And I love my mother regardless because someone high looked over me for so many years. I can't so much hate her for what she did because there was a lot of circumstances behind what she did. But at the end, be thankful and happy for what you had. If you have a child, you love your child. Always remember there are other children that want to be loved too. I one day want to love my mother and be able to hold my mother and hug her to her.
My biological mom was only 16 years old when I was born. Her intention was to either get an abortion or give me up for adoption. Her mother and grandmother convinced her that they would help if she kept the baby. Their intention was to control her with the baby, which is me, by the way. As we all know, very few 16-year-olds can be controlled no matter what you use. Such was the case with my biological mother. After a short time, my bio mom did something to irritate her mother, and we were kicked out of the house. We then went to live with my grandmother. That too didn't last long eventually. Eventually we had to leave there as well. For the next 2.5 years, we went from place to place. All through this time, I ate very little. It was her life. When my mom wasn't hurting me or allowing others to hurt me in ways that most of you can only imagine, she acted like she didn't even know I was there. Before leaving for the day, my mom would prop me up with pillows and give me a bottle of milk and some potato chips. I would cry until I couldn't cry anymore. Nobody came to help. People would walk past us and say, "What a cute toddler," but nobody helped. I remembered that we lived in a car for a short time. My mom put me in the trunk and told me to go to sleep. There was a light and all sorts of bugs kept flying around. I was scared. I didn't talk, so all I could do was cry. I knew that my mom would come hurt me, but I was not ready for what came next. She came out and closed the lid on the trunk. All those bugs were now brought on top of me. When I cried out, it got in my mouth. I squeezed my eyes shut really tight. I put my hands over my ears and pushed my lips together really tight. I cried and screamed all night. But nobody came because nobody heard me. I finally went to sleep. My mom was always doing things like this. It was hard for me to imagine that there were people all around us, and no one saw or knew that we were in trouble. Just one step ahead of CPS, my mom gave me to an agency and told them that she could no longer take care of me. They said that they would help by putting me in a foster home. During that time, I learned to say 60 words. I got shoes that fit so that I could walk and found that I was pretty good at running too. For most of the time, I just sat and watched the people around me. They were kind. They didn't hit or hurt. Even when I cried, they gently picked me up and tried to help. Eventually, it was time to go back to Mom. She didn't like me anymore. I now talk, walk, and don't forget I could run. This also was good because now I could go and find my own food. I even learned to yell really loud and hang on to other people. What I wanted was for them to send me back to those foster people. But I also wanted to take my bio mom with me. The foster people always had people coming over to check up on us to see how we were doing. No one ever came to help my bio mom. Bio mom called the agency again and said that she wanted to relinquish her rights and put me up for adoption. The agency thought that this was a good idea. I went to live with a new mom and dad. Thank God that they were child care workers, regardless would have made. They worked on my eating problem by putting Fruit Loops and little balls all over the house. They gradually took them up one at a time until there was just one bowl left, and it would be filled only 3 times a day. As long as I could see food, I would put it in my mouth. Who knew when I would get to eat next? I would eat until I threw up a bit and eat some more. Mom soon learned to put just the filled plates on the table and leave the food on the stove. That way I only ate what I needed. Since the time I started living with Mom and Dad, I can't ever remember being hungry. But it still makes me very nervous. Your mom says that I can't have a snack because we're going to eat it and they'll explain. It just makes me panic inside. Now that I had a new mom and dad, things were always happening. People came by to see how we were doing. We all laugh now and say that it took 10 people a day to help raise me into our shift because I flat one out. It wasn't that I was a bad child. I was just hyper and curious. Like the time I climbed to the top of the 2-story building on campus. I just wanted to see where those birds went. Or the time that I ate the kitchen my mom put up the milk. And there was the time that I glued the living room with 3 big bottles of Tumblr crap. Tumblr crap with mom made a peanut butter and chili sandwich. Yes, it was me who washed the dog in the toilet after slapping it up with the wash rag and pouring in the whole bottle of Kermit the Frog loaf bath. I wasn't allowed to play in the sink. Yeah, I was just back that week and it was really dirty. But it wasn't me who caused the bubbles to go all over the floor and take 2 hours to clean out. That was Mom. She was the one who tried to flush the toilet in the first place. Of course I didn't tell her about it. Tell her about the washer I could tell afterwards. School has been a challenge as well. At first they said that I was educationally mentally handicapped, but at last. And then I became attention deficit disorder, oppositional defiant disorder, and post-traumatic stress syndrome. Also, teachers struggled to understand. When I was in the first grade, my teacher tried to tie me up with string belts and locked me in a closet because I refused to do a math paper. This caused me to have a complete emotional breakdown at the age of 6. My mom was frantic. There was no information on how to get the school to do what they should be doing. No one seemed to be able to help. Found in my content connected with Patty Dirt. Patty showed my mom how to gather the right people and help her to find the right people who could make the school do better. But this took 10 agonizing months. I recovered though with the help of an intervention of a lot of people. In the fall, Mom came to Washington, D.C. to be a part of a new group of parents and professionals. They wrote the names of their children on a big piece of paper and made a commitment to bring children's mental health issues to the forefront on the national level. Mom wrote my name really big on the paper and took a picture so I could see it. She told me things are going to change. Never did we know at that time just how much people just like you would play a big part in life. The school told Mom that I would never read. This is what I'm not sure, but Mom wasn't here for me. She got on the phone and called around to the parents and professionals. And that summer, my mom taught me how to read. School was very hard because it didn't seem to fit in, and I couldn't figure out why. The Federation of Families Conference also gave Mom the courage to go back to school and tell them that I was going to a homeschool and I would be in regular class. ADHD or no ADHD. I could learn, and it was their turn to teach me. Again, with input from people like you, we were able to come up with modifications and different techniques that worked. Our mental health authority sent people to the school and the house, and they made a plan. I worked at home, and I worked at this after-school program, but not at school. It appeared that they were good at preserving the families, but not the school. Second and third grade. Fourth grade was a nightmare because the teachers had a better way. Actually, it didn't work. Fifth grade was great, and sixth grade was so-so. When I turned 13, everything changed. People called it puberty. I called it 7th grade. Things began to bother me a lot. The kids were mean to me. They would hit and kick me because they knew I didn't like being touched. They stole my backpack and threw it down the hall. They ran me into lockers and called me names. Finally, one day, a hidden kickback. This was the first time that I had ever done anything like this. It took 3 adults to pull me off this kid. I had severe cerebral palsy. The doctor said that I probably had 10 minutes to live by the time I got to the hospital. After talking to a lot of parents and professionals, just like you, Mom said enough, no more meds. Mom, the school, and those family preservation people will work together. My older brother moved back home and shared a room with me. He stayed until I started the 10th grade, just to be sure that I would be alright. This may not sound like a big deal to you, but how many 24-year-old brothers would do that just because you need it? And the visiting teacher came and taught me math and science at home. Mom taught me reading and language, and Dad taught me history. He even went and sat right next to me every day for 1 period of computers so that I would still be connected to the school. The therapist at MHR came by the house for therapy and called me just to talk. This made me feel better. Not enough to get me out of my room and go to McDonald's. That took 12 weeks. But I did get better. I wanted to go back to school, but I was afraid. The school wanted me back and asked Mom what it would take to bring me back in school next year. I think it was the first time I ever heard Mom say, I have no idea, but I'll find out. Those of you who know my mom know that she always has an idea or opinion about everything. This time Mom got on the phone and the internet, and people just came up with some great suggestions. Mom developed a new curriculum and a class that allowed me to be in mainstream classes. Family preservation agreed to teach everyone behavior and interventions, and the school said okay. 8th grade was a huge success. I never missed a day of school. I made A's and B's. I even went on the 8th grade trip to San Antonio and the end of the year games. That year was also good because they found that not only did I have ADD, I also had Asperger's, a high-functioning level of autism. You see, I had a genius IQ. I just didn't like to have a lot of people around me or touching me. There were some bright nights. Well, me too. Starting high school was scary business. Those kids were huge. Family preservation worked with some key teachers and staff. The school gave me an age to be with me all day. Everyone agreed that I wasn't the problem. It was the other kids who didn't understand that I was just like them. Only different. The aide was there to make sure that I stayed on task and that no one irritated me. This helps a lot. Number one, the other kids leave me alone and I can learn. I like to learn, and I found out that I am very good at it. Number two, Crystal Campbell is my friend at mentor. We can talk about things, and I know that he thinks that I'm a good kid. This helps me to feel safer and secure. He also helps me process right on the spot as things are happening. This has helped me understand people a little better. I don't think that I like people any better, but I do understand them better. share some of what I have been able to accomplish with help of people just like you. I spoke in front of the county commissioners about more funding for child and family services and the juvenile justice board for quicker access to assessments for youths who are being detained in the detention center. I spoke at some local, state, and national conferences, advocated in Austin and Washington on relinquishment of parental rights and transition services. I am now branching out to become a keynote speaker nationally. This is fun. Having autism has its purpose. I can speak to a lot of people, and it doesn't bother me. I just pretend that you all aren't there. It really works. It works really well. Try it sometime. At school, I ran cross country for 2 years and improved my timing each time I ran. It didn't matter that I finished last each time. The team got points for the improved time, and that helped put me on the district team. I took Spanish 1 and 2, speech and theater honors. Because of that, they said I wouldn't pass. Not only did I pass them, but as a sophomore, I was asked to join the National Honor Society and was inducted. I got to participate in youth leadership dives as well. These last two caused a few phone calls to attorneys because they never had one like me before. The attorney told the school that he didn't care if I was special or not. If I took the same classes as everybody else, I was in. I mentored several special kids and try to help them through the freshman year of high school. I applied for broadcast journalism. I got one of the 10 spots allotted to my school. And this year I am a webmaster of multimedia. I participated with our local community TV station by filming special events. For the past 2 years, I filmed all the football games for our head coach at school. He said that I did a better job than the district. He gave me a football jacket with a letter, and I didn't even have to play football. I was accepted at the Art Institute in Dallas, and I will take video production if everybody can figure out how to help me be and get around that big of an environment. I tell you all this because none of this could have happened if people just like me hadn't come to my rescue. Oh yeah, that is exactly what it is. The doctors told my mom that I would have lived it. I wouldn't have lived another 3 days if they had adopted. I wanted to come here today and personally thank each and every one of you for all your hard work and efforts on behalf of children and with mental health, behavioral, and mental health issues. You help and touch more lives in a way that you may never truly realize. Even when you say that you have dumb ideas, you don't know what you are doing, and that you can't tell us what to do because you're not a parent. I'm a parent. Deep down we are praying that with all our might that these things are not true, that you will prove us wrong. If you never hear this from another kid that you help, please hear this from me. Thank you for sharing your life, time, and expertise with children so that they can have a chance to realize their dreams just like I have.
If there's a time when the tears should fill your eyes and you can't see past the shadows, to the sound on the other side. Don't despair, because there always will be someone there. Don't lose faith, love won't let you lose your way, because you'll never stand alone. I'll be standing by, I'll keep you from the cold, I'll hold you when you cry, I'll be there to be strong when you can't find the strength inside. And you'll always have a home in these arms of mine. You'll never stand alone. Love is standing by. Oh, yes it is. Yes. If there's a day when the rain should find your heart and you're cold and tired and lonely, and this world has you in the dark, don't be scared. You can just reach for me and I'll be there.